All right, well, Fox Business's Charlie Gasparino with a New York Post op-ed titled "Inflation is Biden's Fault and Only Biden's Fault." Larry Kudlow, host of Kudlow on Fox Business, joins me now. I got this mysterious accent earlier. I don't know if you heard Kudlow. Who the heck is that guy? Anyway, all right, let's talk about the feds. Federal officials, the White House, they're repeatedly claiming that these gas price increases are solely due to the conflict in Europe. We know that's not true. Rather than the reckless anti-oil and gas policies pursued over the last year, when is the Biden administration going to just give in and give up to the fact that they're responsible?
Well, first of all, you have to love Peter Doocy, just in general. That's a very important
God, I
point.
love him to death.
And second of all, Julie, I don't think the Bidens will ever fess up to it. They'll never own the problem.
Yeah.
And by the way, that's an issue because if you don't own an administration that doesn't make the right diagnosis and take ownership, and then it'll never move towards solving the problem. So you got a couple things cooking here, right? For the past year, we've had massive deficit spending, and the Federal Reserve has accommodated it with huge money supply increases. That's number one. You just saw them with this omnibus appropriations bill, which is another $1.5 trillion in spending, about 7% above last year's level. That's what I call wrong direction. By the way, the earmarks make it even worse. The second point is this massive regulatory octopus that is strangling the oil and gas industry. And, there's been a debate about permitting and leasing on federal lands. Well, basically, they've stopped pipelines and they've stopped any new leases because they've got this crazy idea. It's called the social cost of carbon, which is an invented make-up thing that goes back centuries and tries to predict upstream, downstream, global. It's all nonsense, but it's serious nonsense because even producers, Julie, on private lands, which is where most of the oil and gas comes from, they are being stopped by these new regulatory inventions. Some of it's the endangered species, some of it's the clean water, some of it's the NEPA permitting, some of it's this social cost of carbon. So we have 2 million barrels a day less in oil than we had at the pre-pandemic peak. And if you actually change the policy, like if President Biden sent a special diplomatic envoy to Midland, Texas, to make peace with the oil and gas industry, they could make up that 2 million barrel shortfall very rapidly. And if he would send another envoy to Alberta, Canada, and to the XL pipeline people, they could finish that pipeline within a year. That's what industry sources say, and that would be another 800,000 barrels. So I can get you to almost 3 million barrels per day if the regulatory octopus tentacles would be removed. But I don't see any chance of that. I see no chance of that.
I'm glad that you brought that up because, talking about this, we are more than 1.5 million barrels per day under our peak production in 2019, as you just pointed out. When oil, by the way, if you remember, averaged $57, 70% of Americans are favoring increased oil here in the U.S. and gas production. This is a Make It in America goal the Biden administration needs to quickly embrace.
Yeah, instead of going to Iran and Venezuela and all these dictators, let's go to our friends. But, if you're accusing them of price gouging and excess profits, very mean, nasty stuff that's preventing the industry from making new investments. Look, FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, is stopping any new pipelines, period, full stop. Now, let me tell you something. Psaki says in the press room yesterday, the day before, pipelines don't matter because they don't really produce the oil. Well, you can't produce what you're not going to ship. So they know they can't do that. That's why pipelines have to be approved. It would be like milking a cow and leaving the milk on the barn's floor. You got to have pipelines and oil production. They don't seem to understand that. It's a rather hopeless cause. The thing is, we could be snapping back. All this blaming of Putin. Look, I'd love to blame Putin for everything under the sun, but you can't pin this. You'll see next month's inflation will reflect the Putin rise in oil and gasoline prices. But as you noted earlier, and others have, this thing's been going on all year, past 12, 14 months. Gasoline prices, world oil prices, because we're killing one of our greatest industries, for heaven's sakes. And my worry is, with an 8% inflation, Julie, whatever happens, it is not going to end well. Biden's woke Washington, it's not going to end well. I think this the horse is out of the barn, and I'm not sure how you're going to get it back.
I got to get your take on MSNBC's Andrea Mitchell praising Putin's price hike messaging from Biden and actually arguing that Americans are willing to put up with surging pump costs to defend Ukraine. Watch this.
And talking to members of Congress, that they now see the politics right now, and it may not last, that the American people are behind this and more likely are willing to take a hit at the pump.
Well, if it means not bringing war here, right? Like, that's another way to message us, I might argue.
Yeah, and Putin's price hike is a great way to message it.
Oh, and I'm not done. And Democratic Congressman Raul Ruiz seems to be right on message. Watch.
My wife and I feel it at the gas tank already. We're paying a lot of money, and the American families are feeling it at the gas tank too. We have to ask ourselves, what is it we stand for as a democracy? To protect other democracies, and if it means paying a few extra cents at the gas tank, then we're willing to pay that.
Really? What do you make of the Dems' message there, that we're willing to pay the price for, it wasn't Putin's fault. 2 weeks ago, our gas prices were up for Biden, so we're willing to pay for Biden's mistakes.
It's not going to fly. Early polls, by the way, are already showing it's not going to fly. Look, part of Biden's poll collapse, part of Biden's poll collapse over the past 6 or 9 months is directly attributable to excess federal spending, high oil prices, and high gasoline prices. Inflation is the #1 issue out there. So this stuff's not gonna fly. Look, Andrea Mitchell is an old friend of mine, but I would make this suggestion. She should go talk to her husband, the very distinguished and dear friend of mine, Alan Greenspan, who will tell her that when you have skyrocketing inflation because you're choking off oil and gas, because you're spending too much money, it will not end well. And I think folks have this foreboding. Unfortunately, I'd love it to be different, but I'll say this, Joy, the cavalry is coming. Change is on the way. We just have to get through the next 7 or 8 months. How's that?
We'll try. Larry Kudlow, thank you. Great to see you. Have a wonderful weekend.